Oh, man. Did you see Charvarius Ward's media availability after getting signed with the Indianapolis Colts? I know I'm a little bit late to the party. Forgive me for the timing on that. I had watched it before, but kind of got bored and watched it again and thought to myself, how did I not speak about this? I think the video dated March 13th on that media availability, so about a week ago at this point. But boy, I'll tell you what, if you have not watched what he had to say to the fine people in Indianapolis, I encourage you to go get that done. Charvarius Ward's a guy that I personally have loosely followed since he came into the league. He first came onto my radar playing for the Kansas City Chiefs, where he was just locking dudes up. And I remember thinking to myself while watching him, I don't know who the heck this guy is, but he is some football player, and figured the Chiefs would have him and not the Colts. That was kind of my thought process. Particularly, I do remember an announcer saying something along the lines of like he'd worked his way up and he was an undrafted guy, and all of a sudden here he was playing at this level. Like, this was kind of my introduction to Charvarius Ward. And ultimately, after the Chiefs, he ends up with the 49ers. And once again, I remember being aggravated with that because it was kind of a situation of the rich getting richer. I actually think, now don't quote me on the timeline here, but I believe the 49ers and the Chiefs had versed each other in the Super Bowl the year prior. So Ward went from the Chiefs to the 49ers. So needless to say, as he got signed to Indianapolis, I was already pretty familiar with his game. But what I was not familiar with was his confidence, his personality, his swagger. Right off the bat in this press conference, my man came out here in the black and white checkered suit, the vest matching the actual suit jacket. I mean, it was fresh. And I'm a guy that wouldn't consider myself particularly stylish. And I'm also not the type of dude who would care often what another man looks like. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but I just don't swing that way. But man, Charvarius Ward came into this press conference looking pretty damn sharp. No Diddy, of course. Secondly, though, and most importantly, the way he spoke to the Indianapolis media was something that this team has been missing for a period of time. For those of you guys who have been here for a while, what is the one thing going into this offseason I said that the Colts needed on this defensive side of the ball? What did I say that this defense was missing? Right? A little bit of the nasty. They need a little bit of the That's what I said that this defense needed. And that is exactly what it is that Charvarius Ward is bringing to the table. One time this guy asked, I wish I knew the name of the reporter. I would know the name of the reporter. I just off the top of my head, I don't. And a guy asked him why he came to Indianapolis. And Charvarius Ward basically told him that they were the most aggressive team. So the guy, and by the way, that's nice to hear that Indianapolis was aggressive. Both Cam Bynum and Charvarius Ward both cited Indianapolis as being very, very aggressive in their pursuit. Kind of just more proof of kind of the change in philosophy in terms of the way they're building the team. But neither here nor there. He says Indy's the most aggressive. The reporter then kind of chimes back and says, well, why do you think that was? Charvarius Ward looks at this dude like he has 10 heads and says, well, because I'm a great player. Like, I think that's why. And it was a tiny little thing, right? But it's in moments like that, even if they're small, even if it's just a simple statement, but just the way he approached addressing that question is where you learn why a guy at his level is as good as he is. Like, corner in the NFL is such a tough position. Probably the toughest outside of the quarterback position is cornerback. And you have to understand the rules right now, and we complain about this every single Sunday, so you're going to know what I'm talking about. The rules in the NFL are very much tailored to the offensive side of the football, right? These receivers, not only do they have the rule book on their side, but these guys are big time. I mean, I remember once upon a time, like, there's always been some good receivers in the league, but I feel like you go all the way down to like the 20th best receiver in football, and that is still a really, really big time talent. Like, I think maybe just with the way the game has evolved, becoming a passing game, and kind of the generation of guys like Randy Moss and Marvin Harrison and all the guys that were great in the 2000s. Like, I feel like receiver was just kind of a position that a lot of guys wanted to play, right? Point being, there's a lot of great receivers in the league. And on top of that, they have the advantage. When you're talking about them being matched up with a corner, the wide receiver has the advantage of actually knowing the play call, okay? So if you're playing man-to-man as a corner against one of the top wideouts in football, there are very few things that are more difficult than that, because not only is the guy you're covering likely going to get the call over you if things get handsy and competitive in a fight for the football, but you're also just relegated to kind of reacting to what he's doing. And oftentimes you're kind of out there all alone, meaning that if you get beat as a corner in man to man coverage, everyone is going to see it. And that dude is going to be butt ass naked, wide open for a touchdown or for a big gain. So when a guy is considered to be one of the best man to man corners in football, you know that he means business, let alone the fact if that guy's an all pro, let alone the fact that if that guy has the lowest missed tackle percentage in the league since the year 2018, let alone if that guy had 5 interceptions in the year 2023. And that's what you're talking about with Charvarius Ward. And if you're the Colts, you find yourself in a situation with this dude where on the surface, you have the best outside corner you've had since the Colts were in Indianapolis. I mean, particularly when you consider the fact that he's likely to be here for a multi-year stay. I mean, sure, the Colts had Stephon Gilmore, but as great as he was he really a Colt or was he just the guy the Colts had for a season? I'm going with the latter. He's kind of been a paid mercenary. He's been on 4 teams in 4 years. And Gilmore, we know how great he is. But ultimately, one good season for the Colts, in my opinion, doesn't exactly make you an all-time great Colt. So the closest thing we've had to Charvarius Ward in the 2000s was Vontae Davis. And when you're talking about between those two, who's the better player? My money is on Charvarius Ward. Other than that, for the Indianapolis Colts in the 2000s, I mean, realistically, when the heck have we ever had a good outside corner? You're talking Kelvin Hayden, Marlon Jackson, Pierre Desir, Greg Toller, right? Nick, what's his name again? The guy from the 2000s, Nick Harper, was it? Nick Harper, I think, right? And I mean, that's just really not all that much there. Marlon Jackson, if we're to be fair, one of the most memorable moments in Colts history. There are something when he picked off Tom Brady, nobody cared about the Super Bowl that year. When they versed the Bears, like, sure, I remember Devin Hester. That was the most memorable moment of that game, other than the Colts winning it. Devin Hester, the opening kickoff he took back in the Super Bowl, but that AFC Championship against the Patriots, 38-34, Marlon Jackson, bam, picks off Tom Brady in the final drive. That, for Colts fans, in many ways, was the Super Bowl that year. So Marlon Jackson brought us that. But all things considered, that was like an average corner on the outside. I mean, if you're talking about Charvarius Ward and what he brings to the table, you got to go all the way back to like Bobby Boyd in the 1960s when the team was in Baltimore. I mean, that is how big of an acquisition Charvarius Ward is for Indy, at least on paper. And now he's a guy that becomes an integral piece of a unit that last year and really in recent years was a pretty big weakness for the Indianapolis Colts. Not only has that unit now been improved, but it has a chance to become a major strength for the team, which is something that is, I almost don't even believe the words as they come out of my mouth. But at the same time, this is a unit that has a chance to bring a little bit of the, right? A little bit of the nasty to the Indianapolis Colts. And that's something that you haven't been able to say about this defense for a period of time. But you look at the safeties and Cam Bynum and Nick Cross. And remember Nick Cross last year when he hurt Josh Downs and kind of the way the media pressed him about that. And he had a little bit of an attitude on the way back. And fans didn't really love that. But I remember my takeaway was like, hey, listen, man, you got to tone it back a little bit. But I didn't mind that Nick Cross was competitive. I didn't mind that he was looking and saying, hey, we're out here playing football. And this guy got hurt playing football. I mean, Nick Cross, I was all about that. And sure enough, he came into the year and was absolutely spectacular, all things considered, for the Indianapolis Colts. Jalen Jones, a guy, I went to training camp last year, and him and Michael Pittman had to be separated. I mean, Jalen Jones constantly plays with that chip on his shoulder, and week after week on Sundays, he's a guy that you see his tenacity on the field. He's chirping. He's getting physical. I mean, Jalen Jones is one of these players, let alone Kenny Moore, right? I mean, you're talking about a unit that has a chance to be something really, really, really special. And I think a guy in Jalen Jones, to go back to him, a perfect Robin to Charvarius Ward's Batman. Perhaps most excitingly of all, Charvarius Ward claimed he'd been told by Smooth Lou Anarumo that he would be following the opposing team's best wideout, or at least we could assume that that's going to happen when they feel fit. And that's something that he has a bunch of experience doing. So when you think about a guy like a Nico Collins on the Texans, right, who basically has single-handedly beaten the Colts by himself on a couple of occasions, you have a guy like Charvarius Ward on him. I mean, when you think about how competitive the Colts have been with the Houston Texans, Charvarius Ward, even if just a corner, which many people wouldn't consider to be the type of piece that could put a team over the top, he's the type of piece that could put the Indianapolis Colts over the top. Of course, assuming one of these quarterbacks can come out and play the game of football, right, for the Indianapolis Colts. But that's a discussion for not just another day, for many more days, but not today. Point being is Charvarius Ward is a guy who really looks like he could be a massive acquisition for this team. And yeah, I mean, there's just plenty to be excited about in the secondary for the Indianapolis Colts, and that's just not something we've been able to say very, very often. But I wanted to show a little bit of love to Charvarius Ward because he's a guy that's kind of been one of my favorite defensive players in the league to watch for a period of time. I remember for a period of time, the guys at the time when I first discovered him in Kansas City, I was like, okay, I like watching Ward. I like watching Devin White. I liked watching Jonathan Abram on the Raiders. Two of those three no longer even really good players in the league, but the one that is now on the Indianapolis Colts. So just wanted to show him a little bit of love. Now, for a little bit of a change of pace, I want to actually tell you guys the story of how I became a Colts fan, because I do like to tell it on the channel from time to time. I've probably told it 2 or 3 times, but I don't take for granted the fact that obviously you have new people here. You have people that didn't watch the episodes where I told the story. So there's probably not all that many of you that know it. And when people find out that I'm from New York representing the Colts, they always ask how it was that I became a fan. So we're going to get into that story. But before we do, you know what it is. My name is Justin. This right here is the Riding the Bench Colts podcast. As always, ask anyone watching and enjoying the show, go ahead, shoot a like. It's going to help me get out to as many Colts fans as humanly possible. Of course, subscribe if you want to be a part of the journey. We're on our way to 4,000 subscribers over here on the YouTube channel. We want to get there by the start of next season. We're not particularly close, but at the same time, there's been a pretty steady stream for the offseason of subscribers coming in, so I'm incredibly grateful for that. So if it's your first time here and you're enjoying what you're hearing, or perhaps you keep coming back and enjoying the content, but have not yet hit that subscribe button, perhaps today's today. But of course, no pressure. I'm going to be here doing what it is that I'm doing for a very, 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 very long time. Audio listeners, leave a 5-star, 5-star, 5-star review. Can you dig that, sucker? And let the people know how much you're enjoying the show. The audio side of things is something that we want to grow, but most importantly, in YouTube, be civil in the comments section. We want to further the discussion about the Indianapolis Colts over here, not degrade it into name calling and nonsense, okay? We like to be the intellectual ones, the fanciest schmancies. But without further ado, let's get back into how it is that I became a Colts fan. It was back in elementary school, okay? So I don't remember the grade. I wish I did, okay? But we get brought to the library to do a book report. And this was really, and to this day, I'm not sure if I've been in a library since, to be 100% honest with you, but needless to say, the assignment for the class was go around, search through the library, and I think it was probably kind of an exercise in learning how to read the, read the, whatever, the shelves. I mean, it shows how much I know about books. But they said, pick a book of someone, a biography of someone that inspires you, right? Of someone that you kind of look up to. So while people are out there doing the noble thing and picking people like Rosa Parks and JFK and people like that, your man's is looking for the absolute smallest book possible. So finally on the shelf, and I was playing football at that time as a little pee-wee football, a little Pop Warner, okay? On the shelf, I find this book right here. Now, this, of course, is not the actual copy of the book, okay? But I ended up finding it on Amazon when I started recording the show. This book right here is the book that turned me into a Colts fan. The smallest book on the shelf from a guy or about a guy named Peyton Manning. As a Colts fan, maybe you've heard of him once or twice before. But needless to say, I read this book, and at that point, I was hooked, right? I had found my team. I had already been taking an interest in football, but I didn't have a team yet. And this was after the season this book came out, because I remember one of the pictures in this book, if I'm to find it, is I believe him throwing the touchdown to Brandon Stokely, if I can ever find the book. Really, let me not waste time with all that. Point being, remember when he broke the record, threw the touchdown to Brandon Stokely, all that good stuff? Point being, this was the book right here. So that's kind of why I keep it over here as kind of a little bit of a memento, if you will. So it's kind of full circle for me. If you told me back then that I would be having people actually listen to me talk about this team right here, I mean, I'd call you out of your mind, but that's how I became a fan. And then obviously there was the pivotal point where Peyton Manning went to the Broncos, and that was obviously a gut check for me as a fan, right? Because I had been spoiled, as many Colts fans who aren't from Indianapolis kind of came along in the Peyton Manning era. And people said, hey, you're going to be a Broncos fan now? And I said, fuck that. Absolutely not. I'm sticking with the damn Colts, and not for anything. I mean, Hasn't been all that great since, but we did get Andrew Luck, which was kind of nice. And, we've also had some downtimes, right? You remember Curtis Painter getting that fucking, I'm going to leave him alone. But remember losing to the Saints 62-7 on Sunday Night Football? I was there for that. I stuck with this team through the worst. I'm going to stick with them through the best. And I'm going to stick with them for the rest of my life. It is in my blood at this point. I bleed blue, as the Colts fans would say. So that right there is how I became a Colts fan. And a little bit of praise for a guy like Charvarius Ward, a little bit about the secondary. So not only made it about myself, but made it about the team as well. But that was an episode. My name is Justin. This right here was the Behind the Bench Colts podcast. Like, subscribe if you have not yet. And as always, go Colts.